Welcome to Iron Sights. This podcast candidly seeks to create opportunities and deliver impact by sharing the experiences and wisdom of successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders who unapologetically aim to win in health, fitness, business, and life. I'm your host, Scott Howell. Welcome to Old School Meets New School. Tradition meets innovation, and imperfection meets excellence. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Here we are. Welcome back to Iron Sights podcast. I am elated today to have what I want to call a brand new friend of mine. His name's Cheng, or Top Shot Chris. Chris, thank you for coming down today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you and see where things take us.
This has been sort of a long time coming for me. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and I'm not sure how many of the people that listen to this podcast are going to know about your background and kind of where you came from. So we got to unpack a little bit of that,
sure,
and talk a little bit about who you are. But the exciting part about today is we're going to cover a lot of topics, maybe some things that some people that listen on a regular basis might find a little unexpected, which I think is going to be cool. And the second part of it is we're going to be talking about a really fascinating concept that's fairly new and a little obscure, I think, to a lot of people, and that is the concept of the non-fungible token, or the NFT, which you are quickly becoming an expert on.
Yeah, indeed. It is. It's definitely confusing, and yeah, well, I'm excited to chat more about NFTs, and yeah, I went from skeptic to believer, and I'll tell you more about that, yeah, in a short bit.
Yeah, man, I'm becoming a believer, and I'm interested about the pathway. So we're gonna get into that. But a little bit of background on you, if we had to give the quick bio, and there's a lot to this bio, but first off, for those people listening, Chris is Asian American, gay, winner of the History Channel's Top Shot, which is a TV show. You were sort of season 1, season 4 winner, which is, we're going to talk about that for people like, what the hell's Top Shot? Sure. They might not have heard about it. For those that know about Top Shot, they're like, oh, that's the guy, right? You're the author of Shoot to Win. You wrote a book, and you're a very active, and this would make sense, very active 2A advocate. And in fact, you've testified in front of the U.S. Senate on the subject of gun control, which we'll touch on here in a little bit, because it relates directly to the NFT conversation. And lastly, or the last two things are, you're a self-proclaimed techno nerd, right? You're a Silicon Valley guy, and you've gotten quite a bit of attention lately, sort of in the 2A community with regard to the NFT business. And again, we'll get back to that. But what I'm finding, just confirmation here is what a nice dude you are.
Oh,
so,
thanks.
Yeah, man, this is a great dude, right? So I think we're gonna have some fun today. And I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I know you are too. But it's particularly as an American, as a red-blooded American, I love my freedom. I love my country, and I love kind of digging into the things that make us who we are as a country. And nowhere, I don't think, in the world can you go and, as a self-taught marksman, walk onto a TV show, win a bunch of money, professional shooting contract, and like $100,000 prize and whatever. We got to talk about that. So from the techno nerd tech guy to winning America's Top Shot, let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is I'm a self-taught amateur shooter who, I actually learned how to shoot at a very young age. I grew up in Orange County in Southern California, and my father taught me how to shoot at the age of 6.
Okay.
And, when we're growing up, you just sort of think, my experience is like other people's experiences. And, there's lots of other 6-year-olds, who also learn how to shoot at a young age. And so, as I've gotten older, I have learned that, yes, that is true, right? There's lots of Americans who learn how to shoot at a very young age. But conversely, I think the thing that I didn't realize until I became an adult is that there are lots of Americans who either never learn how to shoot, period, right? Or they are older when they shoot. And so, for me, having quality time with my father at the gun range, right? Very, strong, positive memories of, me and my father and, teaching me about firearm safety and really just like having a good time, right? Now, I wasn't great as a shooter by any means when I was younger. It'd be the thing where, you know, we would go to the range for an hour or two, punch some holes in paper, guns go back in the safe, and I wouldn't see them for another 3 or 4 years at a time.
Okay.
Right. So I wasn't shooting a ton. It was sort of this super infrequent activity that I would occasionally do with my father. Fast forward, you know, I went to UCLA for undergrad. I went to Middlebury, Institute of International Studies in Monterey. And, you know, my career was going to be in either government or public policy, politics. And, you know, I thankfully stumbled into a tech job.
Okay.
And because for me, like before I was interested in politics and policy, I was always interested in technology.
Okay.
I've always been a technologist. My family, we were one of the first families, you know, in the neighborhood to get a personal computer. And I mean, it was like super geeky back in the 80s.
Right. I remember these days.
Right.
Yeah.
For someone like we had a Commodore 64.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's the old Commodore 64.
Right. Taking these, 5¼ inch, floppy disks. And you gotta, it's like if I wanted to play a game, it's like you got to stick the floppy disk into the drive and then you boot it up and you walk away because it's going to take 15 to 20 minutes
to load up. Yes.
to load up. So, I've been around computers and, I obviously owned, a Nintendo, the first generation Nintendo console. I just always loved electronics and technology and not just the fun that they can bring, but the utility, right? Such as if you're trying to learn, like I played Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Right.
I mean, you're not really flying, but it's
back then that was state of the art stuff.
It was,
man. It gave you an experience you would have not have been able to get.
It was incredible, right? Or if you want to take, learn a different language. And clearly, we've seen how our culture has moved from, in the 80s and 90s again, right? Like a family owning a personal computer was very rare. But that really changed in the 90s. And then, of course, with the advent of mobile phones.
Now we're carrying computers in our pockets.
Literally everybody around the world is carrying computers in their pockets, right? And so, I got my dream job at Google in 2007. And I mean, it was the heyday of Silicon Valley here. And, I just was having such a great time, right, working for one of the, top tech companies in the world. And I started to revisit my interest and passion for sport shooting. And I purchased my first gun from a gun store right down the street from here. And it was a SIG P226. Great gun.
Great guns.
And, that was like the first of many firearms, right?
That's usually the way it goes.
Yeah. It's like, you're not just going to get one gun.
It's like tattoos.
Yeah. So this show Top Shot on the History Channel, came on air, I think like about a year after I bought that, my P226. And it's this incredible, marksmanship competition where they take Americans from all different walks of life, military, law enforcement, lifelong hunters, Olympic shooters, but then they also throw in the self-taught amateur guys.
Right.
We're the X factors, the dark horses. Like I wasn't really supposed to be, on my season. But that's what makes it interesting, right? To really highlight this concept and this notion that Americans from all walks of life, right, are gun owners, are, supporters of the Second Amendment, of freedom, and also it's just supporters of fun.
Right. They're having a good time.
Yeah. So, Top Shot is all about multiple marksmanship challenges, like it's like Disneyland for adults with guns.
Yeah, and you're using this is a 3-gun competition, correct?
No. This is like every gun, and it's not just guns. It's pistols, rifles, shotguns. It's machine guns. It's bows and arrows. It's literally rocks. I use this prehistoric weapon called an atlatl.
Oh, yeah,
it's a throwing spear weapon, right? So the whole concept is, who is the most flexible and adaptable, right? And who can learn an unfamiliar weapons platform in a short amount of time, yet perform at the highest levels. And, for me, when I was watching Top Shot, as one of the millions of viewers, just, on my couch every week,
right.
you sit there and you watch one of your favorite game shows, right? And, we all do this, I think, with, Price is Right and Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, right? You're screaming out the answers because, of course, we're all so smart. And, for me with like Top Shot, I'm like, oh, right. I could do that. I could hit that target. And in my mind, like I have like no justification for like why would I actually be able to compete at that level when, I had no accolades,
no
to
formal
my name,
training, right?
No formal training, no certifications, it's just like literally me just, fantasizing.
Armchair quarterback in the day.
Yeah. Like me fantasizing in my head, like, oh yeah, I could go, kick some ass here. But, I'm the kind of person where if you really want to understand where you stand in life, you've got to go compete.
You got to go test yourself.
Right? Yeah, you've got to go push yourself and test yourself and stack yourself up against the best of whatever it is that you're trying to compete against, right? It's like, it's not a competition if you're just competing with, people who aren't talented or skilled. Right. And so, after Top Shot season 2 aired, I remember turning to my Googler friends who we would watch, Top Shot every week. And I turned to them and I go, hey guys, I know this is going to sound like a crazy idea, but I think I'm going to audition for Top Shot. And they're like, Chris, you're crazy. Like you wouldn't stand a chance. Like why would they even pick you, right, for the show? I Googled Top Shot, auditions, and it was an open audition. I submitted an application and a YouTube video, and, fast forward, they liked who I was, that I was the, gay, Asian IT guy.
You tick some boxes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, being on the show and in the competition, I quickly realized that, I basically had, I think, 2 strategic advantages. The first one was, since I was inexperienced, right, relative to the other competitors, I didn't have any hangups or baggage.
Weird expectations, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, right, I'm the guy who's like not supposed to be there. Everyone's expecting me to lose. So, if I do lose, then like, oh, whatever. Like,
well, I guess there's a couple ways to look at that, right? You can look at it that way, or you can go into with a major chip on your shoulder. Mm-hmm. Like I haven't been given a shot at this, but you know what? I can win this thing, and just be mad or angry and, pull the old Tom Brady every time you step onto the field. There's one way. Yeah. But what you're saying is like, yeah, I was fairly relaxed. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I was competing with myself, right? It's like, how can I make sure that I am the best competitor that I can be? And, some of the baggage specifically that I did not have that many of my other competitors had is, if you're trained military or law enforcement, or if you're a hunter, it's like you have your specific weapons platforms where you've put, hundreds of thousands of rounds, into an M9.
It's like part of you.
Yeah, right. Or Glock 22. And so, my competitors, like an unfamiliar weapon would be put in their hands, and then they would just get in their own heads, be like, I don't know how to, I don't know how, how's this point of aim versus point of impact with this particular weapons platform.
Overthinking it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, for me, I'm just like, so my second strategic advantage was I knew I was deficient in having experience with like a multitude of weapons. So I focused on the fundamentals of marksmanship, right? So I don't care what the weapon is. If it has a trigger and sights,
you need to understand those. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I need to understand.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's such a great story. So, I mean, walk us through the competition. What's some of the crazy shit they made you do? I mean, you mentioned one of those, and I feel like I've seen this thing. Essentially, it's like a spear, right? But you're also using some type of a throwing strap, or maybe it's
throwing stick.
Throwing stick.
The closest analogy is if you've ever been to a dog park and seen those ball throwers. Right. It's the same concept, right? You've got the stick, and it functions as a fulcrum that you can generate more energy, and instead of a ball, you basically have a spear that's on the tip, and so when you chuck it, you're just generating a tremendous amount of energy and force that, you don't want to be on the other end of an atlatl arrow. So, winning Top Shot was just a life-changing experience for me. And, at the time, I remember saying to myself, well, I just won $100,000. I had been working at Google for 5 years, and I was ready for some kind of a change. I thought I was going to just go to another tech company. But when I won, I was like, there just aren't that many opportunities in our lives where you have a very clear opportunity to pivot into a completely new industry
and leverage what you just did, what you just got accomplished.
Exactly. So, I remember telling my parents, hey, mom and dad, I know you're happy for me that I just won Top Shot. And by the way, I'm quitting my job.
Tell me how that conversation went.
They were displeased and also very confused because like, well, how are you going to make a living in the firearms industry? Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I don't know. I literally tell them like, I don't know. But, with my Top Shot win, with this $100,000 cash prize, I want to go figure it out and just explore, right? Because worst case scenario, if nothing happens in the firearms industry for me, I can always go back to tech, right? And so, being a professional 3-gun shooter for Bass Pro Shop, so part of the Top Shot prize package was a professional marksmanship contract with Bass Pro Shops. And to go into this experience where whatever guns, whatever ammo, whatever gear I wanted, I just asked for.
This is a dream for a shooter, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, the feeling of receiving, 20,000 rounds of ammunition is a really special one.
Yeah, especially for now, for the people that have been a part of this ammo apocalypse that we've been suffering for the last 2 years. Like that's just, man, it's like Christmas. Right? Or whatever.
Yeah. And instead of, Christmas only coming once a year for being a sponsored shooter, like it's Christmas whenever I want it to be Christmas, which is like such a, it's such an incredible and humbling experience too. I always do my best to try and remember where I came from. Right. And as we all, become more successful in our lives and our careers, like, I think it's just important to like have perspective that, my family comes from like middle, lower class. Both my mom and my mother-in-law came from communist countries whose families were successful, and then communist governments like took it all away. And then they ended up fleeing to America. Right. And
to live and have a better life.
Exactly. And so, for me to always remember the sacrifices that my parents made for me and my sister to build a better life for us, right? A life that was better than the ones they had. And they've had like, pretty great lives. So I always just try and keep that in perspective. And so, traveling the country, shooting guns for a living, put me in places and I have met, thousands of amazing Americans, people who I probably never would have interacted with, if I'd stayed here in Silicon Valley full time. And I learned so much. And, if we think about how the gun debate has, to be frank, to how it's devolved so many ways over the past 10 years, I just constantly look at how so much of the polarization and how we literally are just talking past each other. It often, for me, a big cause of that is because nobody is willing to talk to each other, actually meaningfully talk to each other and understand, when a gun control advocate says the anti-gun things that they say,
right.
Well, why are they saying that?
Right. Where's that coming from? What's the context?
Yeah. And so much of the debate and discussion, it often boils down to some, talking points. The little, it's like and
they're always the stickiest ones. They're always the ones we're probably not going to agree on anyway, right?
Yeah, and well, it's like you can never really dive into the meat and potatoes of an issue if all you hear is, we can't have 30-round magazines because every bullet means a dead child.
Right. Yeah.
The
conversation's more or less meaningless at that point. Like I can't have that conversation.
Right. Well, yeah, because when the conversation goes in that direction, the natural reaction for a responsible gun owner who hears that, nobody wants to be associated with crime when you are innocent, right? It's like responsible gun owners, we're not going out and committing crimes with firearms. So, right, to sort of boil the ocean, it's like, right, a lot of anti-gun advocates think that, oh, every bullet means a dead person. But then on the pro-gun side, I mean, it's like, I think it's a little bit more of a balanced perspective. It's like, well, yes, like, guns can kill people, but then guns can also save people.
That's correct.
Right? So it's like, right, bullets don't just represent, dead bodies. They also represent saved lives. And it doesn't even mean that people die, right? It just means that you can literally simply present a firearm, right? And sometimes it diffuses a situation. Other times it can ratchet it up, right? It's much more gray area and nuanced than I think your average American who's like watching this all play out in the mass media will, they don't understand.
They're not aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the nuance is so important. Like, and everything's nuanced. I mean, if you're trying to just make it a very basic conversation, you can't. It isn't that basic. It does. There is nuance, and every situation has its own nuance and needs to be talked to and about at an intelligent level.
And, for me, before I was a gun rights advocate, I was an LGBT advocate, right? And so being a gay American, I've always been in this position of people misunderstanding what the LGBT community is about, right? Mischaracterizing or layering negative stereotypes on the LGBT community. And it is always about a marginalized group has to put in the effort to explain who we are
and where you're coming from
and where we're coming from. Right. And like, we just, the gay community, like, we can't play the victim card and be like, oh, people, think that, gay people are like child molesters and like all these like negative things, like, oh, we're trying to like, corrupt the children of society. It's like, no, hard no. This is not, I am a law-abiding American who respects people, and I'm just here to live my American dream and empower and encourage other people to do the same thing. Right. And like, similarly with gun rights, right? It's in my mind, gun rights and gay rights are civil rights. They're both hot topic issues, right? But if we think about, it's this concept, right? If one of us isn't free, then none of us are free. Right. It's just, how do we find the strength to speak our truth, to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, right? And for those who have been marginalized, because, if we're going to have strong communities and if we're going to have safe communities, then we have to understand each other and understand, okay, where do we agree? Where do we disagree? But then ultimately, like, how do we all coexist? Yeah. and sorry, I mean, like, back to, traveling the country, right? It's like, for me, 4 years of being on the road and going to parts of the country that I just, to be frank, like, they're always flyover states.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Gotcha.
Yeah, but if you really, I've just found if you really take the time, right, to like meet someone and understand, who they are, and then vice versa, right? Like, if they get to understand who I am, like, most gun owners don't care that I'm gay,
right?
And that's what I want.
It's pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah,
they're pretty reasonable. Yeah. But I think that's, you're going back to that, and you're talking about gay rights and gun rights. There's always in all of these communities, there's always, the pendulum kind of swings both ways, right? There's kind of this spectrum of, some people can be all the way on one side and some people can be all the way on the other. And sometimes those are smaller portions of the whole, right? And they're making noise or saying things. Maybe it's a little bit more polarizing, or it's a little bit edgy, or whatever the case is, but it's drowning out somehow. These small factions drown out the noise of the greater community, and the people in the middle are looking to the right and they're looking to the left, and I mean that literally and figuratively, and going, no, that's not me, man. Like, pipe down. Who's representing my views, right? Who's representing the look, man? I'm just trying to provide I just want to be a member of my community and have a happy life, and, encourage people to do the things that they want to do that makes them happy. It seems like we're facing a lot of noise right now. And if you move that over to the gun community, like, I know there's a lot of people right now that aren't happy about the messages that are being sent. from those supposed advocates of that community. We can talk about that a little bit, but going back in your experiences, I think what you'd said there was, look, I met a lot of people that are 2A people, they're shooters and they're gun rights advocates. And they don't give a shit that I'm gay. Like, why would they? Because you've lumped them into something that they're not.
Yeah. And to be very honest, I had some negative prejudices and stereotypes about the gun community when I left Google, where I'm like, okay, am I going to run into homophobes, as I'm, you're right. Doing
let's put it out there. Like rednecks, right? Like who's going to accept me? Who's not going to accept me? Am I going to run into like this, again, stereotypical gun owner?
Yeah. And I mean, of course there's been, one-off incidents of both like homophobia and racism, but you know what? Like that exists everywhere. Right? It's like, it's not, I would say like, right, the level of like racism and homophobia in the gun community is, I don't know, it's like not like totally different than just sort of other kind of general communities at large. But I think the main point of everything for me is, since I occupy space in both the gay community and the gun community, I see some common threads of people who are afraid or are ashamed for who they are. Right? It's this it's the concept of, right, the closeted gay person and the closeted gun owner. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's like, and I know the dynamic of, right, closeted gun owner, where it's like, okay, there's a mass shooting. Then all of a sudden, right, your family and your friends are like, hey, Chris owns a gun. Right. Let's go to, Chris, what do you think about, what's this thing about assault weapons? And like, why do you need a 30-round magazine? And like, what if you just got rid of your AR-15? Like that
everything would be better.
Everything would go better. And it's like, it puts you into this awkward position of like, I mean, I've been studying this for 10 years, but I know a lot of average gun owners, like they're not necessarily like studying the finer points of all of this, which is totally fine. But the point is, if people are coming after you because of your support of the Second Amendment or that you own a gun, and these questions that are coming at you are not in good faith, mm-hmm. It encourages you to stay quiet, to stay closeted, and don't talk about it.
Not say a word. Or again, going back to the factions on the either side that could also do very poor things. And you could be asking that question of somebody who doesn't have good intentions or is not well educated or articulate or whatever the case. And they end up making the entire community look bad because this guy said this represents everybody. And that's just not the case, mm-hmm. Right? They end up, let's just say it's a very underdeveloped answer or reaction to what could be a discussion, but we're trying to give an answer in one sentence or in a snippet or in a caption in a post or in a tweet or in whatever the edited down editorial footage is that comes on the news.
And as much of a technologist as I am, I don't believe social media and the internet is doing us any favors with respect to having and encouraging and facilitating civil, respectful dialogue and discussion. And so, I value technology. I think social media has its place, but, on a very high level, I'm a technologist who wants to make our real lives better, right? Being on social media is not real life. Right.
Right.
I mean, like, it just can't be more literal, right, than that. And so I know it's so hard for many of us to resist being on our phones all day long and having FOMO and seeing, pictures of whatever our friends and family are doing. But this, for me, like the best technologies are the ones that make us feel more productive, that make us happier, that make us healthier.
More connected, right? More fulfilled. Yep. And feel better about ourselves, basically, than constantly the game of comparison and the highlight reels.
Exactly. So, I have a sense, and some of the data supports this, that there's going to be a little bit of a technology backlash over the coming generations.
I think we're feeling a little bit of that now.
It's the younger generations, paradoxically, and there's some pockets that are spending less and less time on certain social media platforms. Of course, now we're going to have to see, hey, like, how sustainable are those trends? Like, is this just a one-off blip?
Or what are they switching to?
Mm-hmm, right. Exactly. What are they switching to? Are they just moving from social media into, like, I don't know, video games or something else? But even video games, right? It's like,
still not real life.
Still not real life, but, I played a lot of video games, growing up, but this was before, like, networked video games. But the dynamic of, networked video games encourage collaboration and communication.
And some level of community and agency.
And if you want to win, you need to communicate.
You have to be part of that.
Yeah. And for me, I'm a competitor, right? And I'm a capitalist. I'm a competitor. I believe that competition is what brings out not just the best in us as individuals, but the best in business, right? The best in everything.
Innovation, right?
Right. Yeah. And so, you're right, certain technologies will either facilitate that, or in the case that we just talked about, social media, like sometimes it just doesn't.
It feels like it's devolving things, right? I think it's a great actual place to kind of segue and maybe change gears a little bit and get into the technology that you've sort of talked about your experience there, but you've been involved in heavily, and we mentioned at the top of the show, which was the NFT technology. So this is, again, I think for a lot of people, and when I have this conversation with people, they look at me with their head cocked a little bit like, Scott, what are you talking about? And the reality of it is getting down to it. I've only had, I've tried to articulate it a few times, and I'm not sure I'm doing a great job about it. So I've heard you talk about it. I've read things that you've written about it. And I think I'll just kind of start kind of from the top and have you give us your take on it. But I'll just start with a really basic question. What the hell is an NFT, and why should I want to know about it, and how do I find out more about it? So I'm just gonna turn it over to you and let you kind of go with that.
Yeah, sure thing. So NFT, it's an acronym. It stands for Non-Fungible Token, but I really discourage people to don't worry about what the words mean. In essence, when you hear the letters NFT, just think of it as a digital collectible. And there's this new technology called the blockchain, which is what cryptocurrency is based off of. This blockchain technology essentially allows us to ascribe ownership and provenance and value to these NFTs. NFTs can be any kind of digital file. It can be a picture, a video, an MP3 file. Real estate contracts are starting to even
I've heard actually NFTs. MIT is actually now looking at an NFT diploma. Mm-hmm. Right. As a matter of fact, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, and so at a very high level, NFT technology is a way for individuals, companies, entities to issue digital goods that are authenticated by whatever company, brand, if you own a trademark, right? So it is very confusing. I've been studying NFTs for about a year now, right? And a year ago, I was like, what is this NFT stuff? And it's like, I'm a technologist. I've been watching and studying and being, the best student of technology that I can be for pretty much my entire life. And when NFTs hit my radar, I'm like, I don't understand this. I think it's bogus.
Right. It's gimmicky, right? That's what it seems like. I think from my simple brain would be like, hold on, I understand art. And that's kind of seems to be where it kind of started. And that might be an easy way to describe it. You talked about the collectible thing, and I think there's some lines you could draw there or connect dots for people to understand it there too. But like art, I buy a piece of art, right? Why am I buying the piece of art? Because I enjoy art, right? And having that art kind of brings me maybe some status, right? Or whatever. Like if I got a Picasso hanging in my living room on Park Avenue, why do I have that? Well, it's a beautiful painting, but I find value in that, right? And I've now paid, speaking in NFTs, apparently at the beginning of this year, there was a piece of digital art that was sold for $70 million. So it was an NFT for $70 million. And people are going, That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Basically, you paid $70 million for a PDF or a PNG that I could have downloaded off the internet.
Yep.
It's more of that. It's like, why in the world would somebody have that? Well, it gives them, we're going to talk about it, but it's different than having the art on the wall. But I think it's still conceptually similar, right? It gives me like, now I'm part of this bigger community. I have a little bit of status, or it gives me access or something else.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's dive into this example of artwork. And it also comes down to literal dollars and cents, right? That there is now actual monetary value that we can ascribe to very specific digital files in the form of an NFT. So, right, in the NFT world, like one way that I was, doing my best to wrap my head around this concept, the first 3 months of me like looking at NFTs, I was super skeptical. But as this is one of those things where, it took me 15 to 20 times of like hearing it explained and re-explained over and over again. Like, I'm just still sitting here being like, I don't get it. Like, I think I'm smart. Right, I'm smart, but like
that is a challenge.
Why is this not clicking? Right, it's like what am I? Right, it's like what am I missing? Right, what am I missing? Like,
I want to believe it. Yeah, like I want to. Yeah.
Why did this piece of art called Beeple sell for almost $70 million? Like I don't like. What am I not getting here? And so the one analogy that I think kind of helped wrap my head around this is back to the art example of like take the Mona Lisa for example. There's only one copy of the Mona Lisa. There's millions of people all around the world that go see the Mona Lisa in person. Now, you may take a picture or some video of the Mona Lisa with your phone. That copy is worth nothing.
Zero.
It's worth, maybe if you do something interesting with it and you, I don't know, print larger poster copies of it, maybe someone would pay you like novelty, $10, right. $20. Like even if you go to the gift store where the Mona Lisa is and you buy, right, sort of the authentic, whatever reproduction of the Mona Lisa, maybe
still not the same.
It's still not the same. And so that's sort of the analogy here of, right, this Beeple artwork that's worth $70 million. Well, right, we could literally, Google it right now and like bring it up and you could download that file and like live on your laptop or live on your phone, but it's not the authentic one. And how do you know that it's not the authentic one? It's this new NFT blockchain technology, right? Where it's basically a public ledger,
right?
Yeah, and it's a public ledger that everybody can see what's the provenance of this digital file, right? Did it come from the original author, the trademark owner, or the content creator? And that this is NFTs right now, the start of it was mostly for collectors, right? Whether you liked collecting art, you might have heard of, these crypto punks and bored apes. There are these little avatars and people are paying tons of money just for these little graphic avatars. But then there's this other dynamic around digital collector's cards.
Like a baseball, basketball card or something.
Exactly, right. And so, for me, having collected baseball cards and Garbage Pail Kids cards, and I immediately clearly understood the collector's card opportunity for the firearms industry and for the gun community, where the NBA, as an example,
good example. Yeah.
NBA has an NFT marketplace called NBA Top Shot. No relationship, to Top Shot on the History Channel.
Yep.
But the NBA, right, they're selling NFTs in the form of 15 to 20 second videos of all your favorite players hitting game-winning 3-pointers, slam dunks. And they're creating, 40,000 copies of a video and selling them for $10 a piece. I mean, then you just do the quick maths, like how many players are in the NBA? Right. And I mean, they sold $780 million worth of NFTs in a little over a year.
This is a massive market we're talking about. It's a new market essentially has been created.
Yeah. And so, NFTs are the next evolution of digital rights ownership. So for me to try and like highlight this point. So if you rewind, let's say like 10 years ago, right? And like, let's say, I don't know, 2010, when like mobile games were becoming really popular. And like, have you ever played the Candy Crush?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Candy Crush, this game, it's sort of like Tetris kind of, and you can pay 99 cents for little power-ups. You own them, right? You literally own a digital good within the Candy Crush ecosystem, right? So this concept of people paying real money for digital goods within a game has existed for a long time.
It's already happening, right?
Right. But now the difference with NFTs is this, and this is where there's a massive opportunity in games and with firearms and really any kind of digital objects within games is the digital goods that you buy as an NFT, they are not trapped within a single game or a single digital ecosystem. You could go take your digital, your NFT Glock 19 and play it in this, blockchain game or
because it has actual currency attached to it, whether it be through hard currency or cryptocurrency.
Exactly.
Right. There's currency. It is worth dollars because, I think we'll get to this, but people have paid for this, right? And that value is increased, and maybe somebody sold it again for more money. Now it's worth more money, right?
Exactly, and
it's programmable.
Yeah.
Right? It's programmable. So you could, like, if I sold it once and I wanted royalties on it, if I was the original owner and I wanted royalties on this thing, right? And I could program it to say, this thing can be split 4 times, right? And that's it, ever, because of the blockchain that's attached to it. And it's split. And so people can pay for it, but every time, and they could sell it, right? And every time it's sold, I'm going to take a percentage of each time it's transferred.
Yeah. So there's this, hyper sustainable and scalable royalty model where, every time an NFT changes hands, there are these things called smart contracts, which essentially can be a custom contract that assigns royalty payments to whoever
is attached
you want. Right. Yeah. But I think to go back to one more example about this concept of like digital ownership within games. So I'm not a huge gamer anymore. Like I stopped playing, computer games like 20 years ago, but I have some friends who play these games where, they're, first person shooters or, multi player, role playing games. And you are buying weapons, like a sword, for example, right? You buy like a sword and it starts off at like level 1. Like level 1 power of whatever sword,
whatever the sword is, right?
And as you are, slaying more bad guys, and you're beating levels within the game, right? The power of that sword can go from level 1 right to level 2, 3, and whatever, ultimately up to like a level 50 like power, where it's like, whoa, you can like slay whatever dragon you want to slay, right? With this sword. And then the crazy thing is that kids and adults are paying tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars for these digital weapons.
So they can have this power to play against others?
Yeah. Well, and so you have like some gamers who are like building like weapons and kind of, they're almost like digital blacksmiths.
This is wild.
Right. And then you have other players who, they don't want to build the weapons. They just want to buy it, right? They'll just like plunk their money down and be like, I don't want to spend, thousands of hours in this game trying to like, enhance digital weapons.
Just give me the power now.
Give me the power now.
Give me that instant gratification.
You've got these high schoolers, right, who are making like tens of thousands of dollars because they're selling digital weapons within some of these games. But again, like the difference of what is going to soon be, then and then now in the future is those digital weapons are not going to be locked in a single game. You're going to be able to use your NFT weapons in a whole variety of different games. And then the thing is that all the provenance and the history, right, of your weapons are all captured on this digital ledger. And it's like saying, so back to real guns, right? So even all guns are not the same. Even like the same make and model, right, of a particular gun is not the same. Right. But right, so for example, a gun that Annie Oakley owned and shot, that same gun owned by someone else, like, right, it's like Annie Oakley's
the same
gun.
model of that gun,
the same model, right? The same model of that gun. It's not the same, but if Annie Oakley, right, or Buffalo Bill or someone like famous, right, like owned and like used that gun, it's like gonna be worth more.
It's like having an autograph on, the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, right? The Ken Griffey Jr. card is a cool card to have, that rookie card. But if you got an authenticated autograph, but here's the thing with that, like how many how many autographs has Ken Griffey given? So how many of those are available in the universe versus there's one of these that can be authenticated, right on down to so what you're saying on this ledger, to my knowledge, is also forward facing. Anybody that's playing in this world can see it. So it's not like it's, well, who's controlling the value of this cryptocurrency thing that's going on right now? How is this really working where it's a little bit obscure? Like who's in charge here?
Yeah. Well,
who's governing this thing?
Yeah. And I mean, then, so on that piece, there's this decentralized framework around blockchains and cryptocurrency where there's no single, it's not controlled by the government. It's often controlled by a collective group, and then usually it's just like a collective group of people. And the rules are all transparent. There's, voting groups called DAOs, which is actually a whole nother rabbit hole. I don't even fully understand DAOs, but the point is that it's democratized money, right?
Within the community.
Within the community. And so, since it's, you can't easily manipulate the blockchain, right? So it's like when data has been written to an NFT, it's permanent, it's been validated. Yeah. Right. And so back to the Ken Griffey Jr. example, right? It's like, okay, right. You could take a Topps, Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, and you could maybe even forge Ken Griffey Jr. signature. And of course, Ken Griffey Jr., right? He probably signed, I don't know, tens of thousands of cards right throughout his career. And how's he even going to be able to, I mean, I'm sure if you looked at, your own signature, you'd probably know whether it was yours or not, but hey, it's not that hard to forge a physical.
The reality of it is forgery happens every day, and people are really good at it.
Exactly. So, with NFTs, for example, I have a digital wallet that has been authenticated as me. And so if you bought an NFT from me, the whole world can see, that, the NFT you bought was from me, and that's it. Right. And it's the equivalent of, you see the verification check mark on someone's social media.
Yeah, so at some level that brings some level of accountability to the whole thing too, because you're actually connected to it. Right. It's not so on the black market, if you will, or whatever case. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, I'm sure too, but you have to go through some type of an authentication process, which means there's some type of accountability level at some level. Right. Right.
Exactly. And so, the opportunity here for companies, for brands, for musicians and influencers, it's a way to connect in a different way, right? With consumers or your customers. And, it's so. A few months ago, I ran my own NFT auction.
Right. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And, I'm the kind of person where the best way to understand anything is you just got to go do it. You got to, and you can't be afraid of failure. You can't be afraid of the unknown or the ambiguity of is this going to succeed or what's going to happen? And so, very similarly to, me leaving the tech, industry and coming into the firearms industry and sort of not really knowing well, what's going to come out of all this? I decided to hold my own NFT auction. And so back in April, I was on the cover of this magazine called Recoil. Right. It's sort of like the Maxim magazine of the firearms industry, where it's cutting edge, the writing's great, the photography, everything in Recoil is just so well done. It's the kind of gun magazine for the new kind of gun owner, forward thinking, and so we created this very provocative cover art, which, it
was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. I mean, let me paint the picture here. When I first saw it, I was like, this is brilliant. This is awesome. So it's, here's the things that strike me, and I want to walk through it. First off, it's you on the cover of this magazine, and you're in a t-shirt with a distressed American flag, which is in the pride colors. Right. You're on the cover of this magazine. And again, it's Maxim. So if you know Maxim magazine, you walk through the store and you see the Maxim on the shelf, that's Maxim, right? And you know kind of what's between the covers on that, and it's all kinds of cool stuff. It's kind of one of those things where, yes, it's a little edgier, it's cutting edge, you know, kind of stuff, but there is kind of something for everybody in there. They're talking about the latest technology, they're talking about policy, they're talking about fashion, there's a
culture, food,
all of that's kind of in.
It's a it's almost like a lifestyle magazine.
It's almost like what Playboy, you know, kind of was a long time ago. Like if you're in the gun community, you know about it, right? But going back to the picture, so it's you on there, and so again, I want to paint the picture here. It's you, this T-shirt, the flag. Pride, Asian American, holding a carbine, right? So it's there. I mean, there's a huge amount of texture and messaging in this thing. When you look at it, you just go, wow, there's a lot there, right? You're crossing so many different boundaries, and you're probably making quite a few people feel uncomfortable. You're probably making quite a few people ask a lot of questions of what's going on there, but also what's going on inside my head. Like, how do I feel about this? Why do I feel that way about it? Maybe it makes me angry. Maybe I'm confused. Maybe it makes me really happy. Maybe it makes me proud. Maybe it intrigues me. Maybe it draws me into, I don't know what Recoil Magazine is, but I should pick that up and thumb through it for a second. There's so many things about this cover on this magazine that, again, I said at the top of the hour, it's gained a lot of attention, I think, for a lot of reasons. And now this is the artwork that you turned into the NFT.
Yeah, exactly. And before we kind of go back into the NFT part, you're right, just to speak about the cover art. You know, if we think about, you know, what is art and what's the goal of art, it's sometimes to be provocative, right? Sometimes it's to be inspiring. And I think with the Recoil cover art, right, we wanted it to be all those things. And the reason why we wanted it to be all those things is because we wanted to facilitate the conversation. Now, the controversy was, right, some of this conversation was pretty ugly.
Right.
Like it was, you know, homophobic.
I'm sure.
It was, I would call it like microaggressions of racism.
I'm sure there's a little something of everything in there.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was interesting things. Yeah, so on the LGBT side of things, like, you know, why does Chris have to, you know, say he's gay?
Why are you bringing us into this, Chris?
Yeah, like, stop shoving this gay stuff down my throat. Right. It's like, hey, you know, anytime I hear something like that, it's like, if you don't want to watch, then go.
Turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off. Like, you know, but to the question though, right? It's like, why? So, right, for me, like, I live my life as principled as I can. And so, you know, whether I'm talking back to the, you know, whether it's gay rights or gun rights, it's about not being afraid of who I am. And I see it as it's my personal responsibility, not just as an individual, but I feel an obligation to both the gay community and the gun community to represent a positive face for both, right? That there's plenty of gay people and there's plenty of gun owners who are all just, you know, regular people like me. And, you know, so on the LGBT side of things, if I've learned anything from the gay rights movement, it is very, like, one of the key parts of our success has been being out and proud for decades and decades against, you know, the face of police brutality. You know, in San Francisco, where I've lived for 14 years, you know, was the Compton Cafeteria riots, right, which happened right around the Stonewall riots, which were basically the police departments coming in and beating the shit out of the LGBT community and arresting us, and but these riots were the moments where the LGBT community pushed back, and, you know, those were key turning points in the civil rights movement and the LGBT rights movement, you know, here in America, where, you know, it was like, enough is enough, right? Like, we're no longer going to just hide and cower, be quiet in the corners.
Right.
And this is the same kind of attitude and mentality that I think is important and critical for gun owners.
Agreed 100%.
Right? So that's why it's important for me to say that I'm gay. And it's equally just as important why I say I'm a gun owner, because nobody wants to hide in fear. No one, that's just like not the way to live our lives, to be looking over our shoulder, you know, at every turn. And, you know, it's just, but it all starts with us as an individual.
That's exactly right. Who's oppressing who? Is it somebody oppressing you, or are you oppressing yourself?
Yeah. There's, you know, as a gay person, you know, I've experienced the whole kind of like self-loathing, you know, kind of hey, like, oh gosh, why did God make me gay? Like, why can't I just be like everybody else kind of thing? And I think a lot of gun owners probably go through some, variations of this from time to time. Like, are my guns like really,
am I being ridiculous here?
Yeah. Or like, am I, is me being a gunner somehow making society less safe?
Or am I a weirdo for this?
Yeah. And it's a ridiculous question, right? But again, right, the purpose of the Recoil cover art was to be provocative and to both, inspire. There were so if you go to Recoil's Instagram page and you go back to, I think the announcement was in like April.
Yep.
The cover was actually released in like July and August.
Came out later.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, it's, Gay Pride Month, coming up in June. And then, there's all the, accusations of corporate wokeism.
This is virtue signaling and yeah.
And I get it. And quickly on this note, it'd be one thing if Recoil was doing this as a one-off, right? And trying to do the woke thing.
Okay.
But the thing is, when I, one Top Shot and, I was already gay. Right. It's like I was already gay, and I had my career in Silicon Valley. Right. I was out. But when I came in the firearms industry, I wasn't out on Top Shot. Like I was out in real life, but they never aired any of the footage that outed me.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's peel another layer of the onion back. Well, and the reason why I talked to the executive producer of the show and I asked him at the end, I'm like, you guys have like hundreds of hours of video footage of me and all the competitors talking about like, what is it like, competing with Chris? He's gay, and
none of
nobody cared,
wow.
right? And,
wow.
and so the fact that like, all my competitors were like, we think it's great that Chris is gay, but honestly, like we just want him to be a good shooter,
right? Because
that's what's important for them. This is a competition.
Why is he here? Yeah, exactly.
And so when the executive producer's like, hey, like there just was no controversy, it just wasn't an issue, it didn't make for good TV, and I was like, wow. That's actually really cool because in the fight for equality, I was
going to say the same thing,
right?
Yeah.
In the fight for equality, like equality for me means like I don't want to be special.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with your ability to shoot.
That too,
1,000%. It doesn't have anything to do with that. So I guess I kind of get that.
Yeah, but right, it's like I think sometimes when people are looking at like the gay community or other marginalized people, like speaking up for our rights, I think sometimes that message gets misinterpreted as we want to be better than other people when it's not a other people are here and we're down here and we want to be better. Like equality literally means like we just want the same like opportunities, right? And it's not about entitlement, right? Because and that's where some of the equality conversations get frustratingly
way off track.
Yeah. It's no longer about opportunity. It's more about I'm entitled to, success. And that's not what I'm about. But so, with back to the Recoil cover art, if you look at the Instagram page and you look at all the past magazine covers that they had posted, the silver lining here is even though out of like the 4,000 comments that were on like this post, which was like exponentially like way more than past magazine cover commentary and likes. Yeah. About half of them were negative, maybe even more. Like that's, it was a lot of hate and vitriol, but the unspoken, I think parts of this is that the number of likes for those posts were also exponentially
smashed it.
Yeah. Right. When my takeaway was there's this silent majority.
Yeah.
Right. Of it's easier to just like something and you don't have to, it's a different thing when you're commenting on a post, right? You're putting yourself and your name out there. But anyways, it went to show that, hey, like there's a lot of support around what this cover art stands for, which is that the Second Amendment is for everyone, right? And, for me using my LGBT and my Asian backgrounds to highlight two generally underrepresented, communities within the gun community is important because, I think one of my personal and professional challenges has always been, I'm inspired by other people, right? Just like we all are. However, I don't always need to see, for example, I don't necessarily need to see other Asian people like in like being successful in the ways that I want to be successful. Like, because for me, like the way that I have sort of looked at things as well, if there's no Asians who are successful in the areas I want to be successful in, well, then I'm just going to go do it.
Go be successful.
Yeah, right. I'm just going to do it. And maybe it's a pipeline problem. So for example, there's all this conversation about, Asian Americans, there's not enough of us in movies, in TV. Well, a lot of Asian families do not encourage creatives, film all this stuff. Right. It's like, no. You're going to be an accountant, a doctor, an engineer, and a lawyer. Like those are sort of like the four career paths. Yeah, that's going to make the Asian family proud, right? Don't do the weird acting thing or be a musician. So, all right, on some level, right, for some of these industries, right, it's like Asian families just don't encourage creative pathways or entrepreneurial pathways. Now that's changing, right? That's really changing. For sure changing. And it's changing for the better. And, for Asian Americans, one thing that I think many of us struggle with is the dualism of, I'm American, but I'm Asian. And we're often otherized is sort of the catchphrase these days.
I think that's exactly the word. That's the word I would refer to.
Yeah.
It's other.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring this back to the magazine cover in a second, right? And so there's this common question that pretty much I think every Asian American gets this question at some point in your life, which is,
what kind of Asian are you?
Well, no, it's even,
where are you from? Where are you from?
Where are you from?
Right.
And so I love this game.
Oh, it's crazy.
This
is one of my favorite games too.
Yeah.
I'm with Cece all the time. When that question comes up, I just go, oh, no, you didn't. I just sit back in my chair. And
it's like, bartender?
She goes, hold my beer. Yeah. Right. It goes down the path. So I can't wait to hear your response to this. Yeah.
Well, it really depends on who the person is. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, I always try and come back to, I want to be fully present and understand who is asking me this question, what is their intent, and why do they want to know?
Right. There's a lot there, right?
Because, right, I always give people benefit of the doubt, right? That I trust you until you give me a reason not to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. So I assume best intent and that you're asking me this question just because, you know what, you're just interested in what's my ethnic background, right?
Yeah. So now we're starting to get into the details. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the sort of the darker side of this question, right? Back to this like otherism, it's like, now, are you asking me this question because you're questioning my allegiance
or intent
my intent around me being an American? Mm-hmm. And
it's immediately polarizing.
Yeah. And it's also, I think for a lot of Asian Americans, we just swallow our pride and it's always just go do the work.
Yeah. So
right?
That's going back to the culture thing. And you were talking about like where, what's acceptable in terms of your career pathways and, generationally things are changing in terms of maybe finding the voice in a different way. It's maybe traditionally it's been sort of, I guess almost for me, my experience has been that, there has been a sense of quietness. Like we're not going to push back. We're going to quietly do the work, get the job done here, or just get through this situation and do what's best at this particular time, which is to probably not push back, right?
And some of this is deeply rooted in Asian culture. And I mean, I need to break this down a little bit further, right? Because like Asian culture is not like this like monolithic singular thing, right? Within Asian culture, there's Chinese and Japanese. It's an ancient
civilization, right? I mean, this thing started a long time ago. Yeah. So there's a lot going on there.
But one kind of overriding notion is family pride. And it's sort of, the nail that sticks its head up is going to get hammered down. So what that means is you're often actively discouraged from speaking out, right? It's not so much about individualism. It's about conformity. And like if your parents and your family, if you grow up in a world where, right, you're not actively encouraged to speak up about either injustices that you see, you're not encouraged to stand up for what you believe in, right? If you're just constantly kind of encouraged, nudged, or
mind your own business.
Yeah, mind your own business. Don't worry about the racist stuff that you're hearing. Just go focus on, right, getting a good job, right, getting married, have a good, have a family, right? Just focus on doing the work. Now, on some level, that's what we all have to do sometimes, right? But the purpose of the Recoil Magazine cover was I wanted to plant a very clear flag, both like literally and figuratively in the ground. It's like, I'm an American. And many of us are multifaceted, right? So like, I'm not any one singular thing. It's like, I'm American. I'm also Asian. I'm also gay. I'm a gun owner. It's like, and I don't know, like identity is always interesting, right? Because like in the gun community, for example, and also in the gay community, there are a lot of people who are like, that's how they singularly identify. And that was one other cultural thing that's been super fascinating for me, is to meet gun owners who are first and foremost, right? They're like, their self-identity is gun owning American.
Right.
And I didn't know that identity existed up until maybe, right, 10 years ago.
They're that proud and they want it out there. Yeah.
And I think that's great, right? And this notion of we should not be afraid to speak out for what we believe in. And, with the Recoil cover, right, it's like I'm speaking out on behalf of the Second Amendment. There's also a lot of First Amendment, overlay too, and also representing and speaking out on behalf of minority groups. And yeah, sure. Like I got a lot of arrows slung my way, but like, I don't care. Like it's just. You
can't make all the people happy all the time.
Yeah.
But there's a certain sense of responsibility that you accepted, it sounds like, when this came up.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up wanting to be, liked, I think, just like many of us do.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And, I was always like very outward focused. And I guess what I mean by that is like, I was always like a caretaker. Like I always wanted to like make sure my family and my friends were like taken care of. Like, right, if you call me up and you needed a favor, like I'll drop whatever I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Like if you need me there, boom, like I'm there, like, whatever you need. And, as I've gotten older, okay, well, it's a little bit more of, I need to, make sure I'm, engaging in self-care, mm-hmm. right? I can't always be like giving to others without taking care of myself, because I mean, it can be exhausting and tiring, but, right. The notion that we need to find out how can we be kinder and nicer and gentler with each other. And sometimes it's fine. I don't see myself as a controversial person. Like that's like not who like I want to be, but I also understand that sometimes like that's the lever we have to pull to like move progress forward.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like,
it gets people's attention.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'd rather use honey and like charm people and like have rational conversations and like, let's engage like our human brains. Right. But sometimes like that's not,
sometimes people just need to be shaken up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, yep.
And like you said, right. It's like, if you look at a certain piece of art and if it makes you angry, if it makes you confused or frustrated, I hope the next question that someone asks is why?
Yeah. What's the problem here?
What is the problem?
Or is there a problem? Or is it, why do I think there's a problem? Yeah. I mean, we just we're not peeling back the layers of our own onion. So being patient, being more caring towards people means you got to do that for yourself first. Yeah. You have to take time, give yourself space.
And right, we all have choices where, we can either be angry and hateful, or we can at minimum try and be compassionate and understanding. Now, this doesn't mean agreeing with everybody and everything, but this choice of like, do I want to live a happy life or a sad and angry life? Like those are little choices, literally, right, that we can make. So back to the NFT auction, right? I'm sitting there like seeing this whole like cover art
together
thing, right? Blowing up. I'm like, wow, okay, like this is interesting. I'm sort of like watching this a little bit from a third person perspective, being like, hey, like the out of body experience, like what is happening here? But then it got me thinking, I've been paying attention to all this NFT stuff for months. And, now I'm like, I wonder if there's this opportunity, like now that I'm sort of part of I have this like digital asset, like this, digital cover art. Right? It's like the magazine cover in a JPEG, right, format. Mm-hmm. And like, let's experiment here and see, can we run an NFT auction for the cover art? And I talked to Recoil Magazine, and they were super confused at first. And they're just like,
"Oh, what?"
Yeah, and they're like, "Chris, like, okay, this is like real crazy." And we had all these conversations about like, okay, well, if we do this auction, who's like the content owner, right? It's like Recoil created the cover, but like I'm the subject of the cover. And so where we land, I mean, this is all so new, right? It's like, what are the sort of, I don't know, there's no like rules or expectations. You have to come up with those, yeah. We're literally just innovating and kind of creating as we go along. And the analogy that we landed on was, okay, if I was selling physical copies of the Recoil magazine and like at an autograph booth, and I had like, a stack of 50 Recoil, issues, and I'm autographing them, I can charge whatever I want.
Yeah, that's you reselling, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a resale license.
Exactly.
Right?
So, Recoil, basically, yeah, they gave me their blessing. Like, yeah, Chris, like,
have at it.
You go off and like, you manage all of this. And then to kind of, summarize how the auction went. I mean, it exceeded our expectations.
It was fun to watch.
Yeah. It was absolutely wild to see bidders spending lots of money on 10 rare copies.
So you broke it down. There were 10. You basically made 10 of these available.
We made 10 available, right? Part of this whole NFT dynamic is the scarcity, right? How many of the thing is there? And sort of like, with baseball cards, there were only so many Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards.
Yep.
And if you bought a 5-pack, right, of upper deck cards, like, you didn't know what you were going to get, but if you got a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, or
the $50 you spent on the 100 packs of cards that you bought was instantly paid off.
Yeah.
Right?
And so with NFTs, there's a similar dynamic of scarcity. Mm-hmm. And, what was so inspiring for me is, we raised we created $31,000 in value out of nowhere. And what I mean by created is the 10 winners bid a cumulative total of $31,000. And
that's currency.
Yeah, real dollars, right? And in a post survey that I sent to the winners, there was one question that said, why did you pay what you paid for this NFT? And the answers were basically resoundingly, I support what Chris is doing, supporting the Second Amendment community. There were a few Asian winners, and like, I want to, help represent the Asian community. There were some LGBT winners as well. And it's like, I think it's great, right? The LGBT community is being represented. And like, and here's the thing, right? Back to what I was saying earlier about, I'm a competitor and I want to win. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to gun rights and really just civil rights in general, if you want to win, you have to create the big tent. And this means literally grassroots, right? Reaching out. If it's like one person at a time, I'll sit down with anybody over a drink or a meal or whatever. Like I'll sit down in front of one person, or I'll sit down in front of 435 senators, right? Testifying in front of, Congress kind of thing. And this is what it takes to win, right? We can't.
It's campaigning. It's campaigning to win.
It's grassroots advocacy. And back to social media. I mean, of course, like social media can be this great megaphone, right, to help amplify, right, messages and things that we believe in. But sometimes there's just no substitute for the actual, what I consider hard work, which is, what are you doing in person? Like, not what are you doing on your phone or online.
Right.
It's what are you doing in person? And so, these NFT winners, what's so fascinating, and part of what I've been talking about with NFTs is they're now owners, right? There's 10 owners of this magazine Recoil cover art that represents the notion that the Second Amendment is for all. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about NFTs is it's an abstraction of the subject, right? So back to like baseball cards in person, right? It's like if you and I were talking shop about baseball cards, like we are right now, it's like, well, we're not playing baseball. Right. We're not throwing the ball. We're not hitting. We don't have a bat in our hands. We're not at a stadium, but we're talking about baseball. And so these NFT owners, right? They're not shooting guns. They maybe don't even own guns, but they own this, and they paid the serial number 1 winner. He paid $10,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Right. And again, it's like back to you can Google Recoil, Top Shot Chris Cheng, and you can see the same cover like online. You could download it and I don't know, put it as your phone wallpaper, but it's not worth $10,000, right? It's not the NFT version that the winner paid $10,000 for. So it's a totally new way for me personally, like to connect with, my fans and followers. It's a new way for us to talk about not just like firearms and firearms culture, but it's about the Second Amendment advocacy, First Amendment advocacy, and abstracting. It's like I don't want to say no one, but fewer people are going to be afraid of like someone's picture holding a gun in a non-threatening way. Right. And so I'm very optimistic that firearms related NFTs have this potential to facilitate and open up some conversation and dialogue about guns, just like it does with baseball and cars and all the other things that exist in our lives.
So it's opening up the greater conversation. There's culture that's involved there. There's policy that's involved there. There's economics that are involved there. And if you can expand the conversation, you could expand the community. And those that may not, like you were just mentioning, the winners of the 10 different NFTs, they're all coming at it from a different angle. And now maybe they're more open, right? Maybe the person from the owner from the LGBT community, who's not a gun advocate and, just has been fearful of even going down that path and maybe has had different ideas about guns, right, is now more open to, maybe I'm ready to listen. Maybe because I have ownership in this thing, this greater community, where the other people may have, they're accepting this for maybe different reasons, but the same, right? Like maybe it's just like, I just want to be part of this because I love Recoil Magazine. I don't know, right? Yeah. Maybe it's I want to be part of this because I'm an Asian American and I want to support what Chris is doing, right? Or I'm from the LGBT community. All of them are supporting the same thing, maybe in a little bit different way, and they might all have different views. But now you put them in a position to have a conversation about it, where they are already in that community, right? They're not trying to decide whether they should or shouldn't be. They're now in a sense part of it, and you've opened up again a platform or a space. Let's say a space to have that. So how does it grow from there? Would be my next question.
Yeah, for me, it's about how do we expand this NFT ecosystem. And, I've been trying to encourage other, people in the firearms industry and the firearms community to start thinking about, hey, how could you get your products and your person and your videos or whatever, your content, your creative content into this NFT ecosystem? And, as we've been talking about, everything's been moving digital. Mm-hmm. NFTs are just this. It's this one ginormous step into the next. The next. What am I trying to say? Not next edition. It's just like the next level.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Of digital ownership, and I guess I always just come back to the quote real world, and sometimes we do things in our careers, in our lives, and especially when it comes to advocacy, and you ask yourself, is anybody listening?
Right.
Is what I'm doing
is getting through, right?
That, or is this worth my time? Am I making a difference? Because for me, that
having an impact, yeah,
that's a big driver for me. Is I'm trying to do as much good as I can before I leave this earth, and so I'm trying, especially working at Google, which is a place where Google's still trying, right, to maximize impact, right? Like by getting, billions of users right onto its products. And so like, that's sort of like where my mentality has always been, is like, how can I like maximize my impact? However, back to like, hey, even if it just means me impacting one or two people
at a time.
And so a very personal story that I want to share about the Recoil physical, magazine coming out and hitting newsstands. I was home in Mission Viejo, down in Orange County, when the magazine was on newsstands, and I wanted to take my parents to Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, right.
And I had no idea that Barnes and Noble
was even carrying it.
No, that they were even still in business. Still a
thing. Yeah, that's true.
I hadn't been to a bookstore in forever, right? And this is like, middle of the pandemic,
right.
And it was like interesting, like walking around this bookstore, and there was the cover, and I'm taking my parents are taking some pictures of me, with the magazine on the newsstand, and then I notice out of the corner of my eye, there's this gay couple that's like looking at a different rack, right? And as I'm sort of chatting with my parents, I noticed that one of the guys in this gay couple, like they saw the cover and they saw my LGBT colored flag shirt on the cover, and he walks over and he like motions to his partner, and he's like, hey, like I saw them like, like pointing at the cover, and it was like
they were discovering it, right?
And he pulls out his phone and he takes a picture of the cover, and I just like couldn't help myself, but I just like busted him like, hey, just like that's me on the cover. And he is just like, he like looked at the magazine cover, looked at me, super confused, but that made it worth it for me, right? Gotcha. Because and back to the cover art, and it's like a lot of people, right? We want to see people who look like us, that believe in the same things, right? To find the commonality, right? The humanity in the human condition. And so for me, like that was like such a cool moment, right? It was like, honestly, like all of the negativity and stuff that had been flying, I'm like, okay, like whatever. I of course I can deal with it. It's no big deal. But like, just like be there in that moment was so cool, because that's the whole point, right? Is to connect to new potential gun owners, or to make them think, hey,
maybe I can think about this differently.
Yeah, I've always been a little gun curious, like want to go like shoot a gun, like ooh, I'm scared of it. Like I understand the fear. Like guns are dangerous if you don't understand them, right? If you don't understand the basics of firearm safety, safe handling.
It's one of the big problems with the gun community right now is we don't do a good enough job at talking about that to other gun owners. Just because you have a gun doesn't make you a responsible gun owner. Right. Like there is responsibility that comes with doing that. But I think we need to be talking about that more as a community, right? Like there is danger in owning a weapon, right? But that's not what the weapon is. The weapon isn't danger, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I look at firearms as one of the many tools that I have in my possession. And so, my husband and I, we bought, this redwood forest property, in the Santa Cruz area in the middle of the pandemic. And we're like, we grew up in the suburbs. Like I grew up in Orange County. He grew up in San Diego. And now here we are like living in the redwood forest, and we now own 3 chainsaws, right? It's like, and we own 2 pieces of heavy Caterpillar earth moving machinery.
Sounds amazing.
Like we could literally just like crush ourselves to death, and like no one would find us for days.
The relative danger there with the chainsaw is very high.
Yeah.
Right?
But so it's like, just like with the firearm, there's like I'm not just going to hand someone a chainsaw if they've like never used a chainsaw before.
It's irresponsible.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's just some of these basic fundamentals about any kind of tool that, or machinery, right? It's like, I'm not just going to throw someone into my excavator and like have them go like putter around unless I teach them how to safely operate the machine. So, with guns, there's, I think, so much like mystique mixed in with like fear. Which I think prevents a lot of people from even taking that first step of understanding, what is it like to go shoot a gun? And that's like literally just sort of like the first barrier to break down, is at minimum to just remove some of that negative stigma and the fear around firearms, and that they're tools.
it's how it's introduced to you, right? For you, it was introduced to you as a young boy, right? And it was time with your dad, right? To go out and spend time and bond and have some fun. And it wasn't all the time. It was sometimes, like you said, like, every 3 weeks or months or whatever it would be. Like you would go out and
for years, 3 or 4 years.
But that's what it was for you. It wasn't a negative thing. It was a positive thing. It was like, yes, I get to go out and spend time with my dad. Right.
And it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Right. But unfortunately that's not how, and you said like many older people have never had any experience, and the experience they're getting is through the media or through some negative communication or messaging.
Yeah. I mean, on another very personal note, so I won Top Shot in June of 2012. And so for the first 6 months, I was having a blast, right? Like, free guns, free ammo, getting flown all across the country, autograph signings. I'm like, oh, it's like 5 minutes of fame, right?
Living your best life.
Yeah. Well, December 14th, 2012 comes around, and that date is important for me for 2 reasons. The first is that it's my birthday. The second is that it was the date of the Sandy Hook shooting. Right. And, here I am in San Francisco celebrating my birthday with, 15 friends. And, it was a really dark day.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Iron Sights. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can support our mission by hitting the subscribe button, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with a friend. I'll see you on the next episode.